what sales forces you to do is listen to the people who really matter to that process, right? Whatever that process is, right? Like whether that is you trying to sell a product, whether it is you trying to find the right market for something, whether it is you trying to develop a new product, all of that feedback loop in some sense and problem solving is part of the sales cycle.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Outreach.io. Every revenue team suffers from a sales execution gap, the gap between the potential revenue of an organization and the actual revenue it achieves. To innovate, grow, and win, leaders must embrace technology to improve their team's sales execution. When organizations close the gap and execute at their full potential, they win more deals with less effort, forecast without guesswork, and deliver a better customer experience. Over 5,000 global customers trust Outreach as their sales execution platform. Find out why Outreach is the right solution for your team at click.outreach.io/side. We also want to thank Outreach for being a sponsor of the 2021 Sales Census and for their continuing support of DEI causes in sales.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ryan Woodard.
I'm Sue Singh.
And today we are really excited. We have Shruti Kapoor with us, and she is the CEO and co-founder of Wingman. She's a huge fan of Iron Man, particularly because of their Jarvis or the Jarvis interface that he has. She thinks every sales team should have their own Jarvis. She's worked across science research, investment banking, technology investing, commercialization, product development, fintech, and sales. So we are super excited to have you here, and we'll just dive into Sue's excitement to ask you a couple questions.
Awesome. Great to be here.
I am so excited to talk to you, Shruti. I've been waiting for this for a long time, as you know, and, tell me, why sales? For a woman
as you can
from
see,
India, why sales?
As you can see, I've done many different things. So, I can probably answer a lot of those questions by a process of elimination. I think that's, in some sense, my philosophy to life, right? Like when you don't know what you want to do, figure out what you don't want to do. And I think, the why sales also, wasn't a direct path for me, but literally the way I landed on this and the reason why I decided to stick around was I realized that it didn't matter, which of the other things I wanted to excel at, right? Sales was kind of pretty basic to excelling at a variety of things in the corporate world, right? So like literally when we think about investment banking, we think about somebody, juggling numbers and, being smart with finance. But what it really boils down to is being a good salesperson, cracking that deal, maybe playing some golf in the olden world. And so I think that's kind of where I realized the value of sales. And I realized that, whether or not you like it, whether or not I like it, might as well face up to it and try and learn more about it.
Well, now I have to ask, do you play golf?
I don't yet.
All right. You got
I
to,
like
yeah, I like the optimism. That's one way I got introduced to golf. My dad always tried to get me to play it, but definitely kind of got introduced to that through sales when I was a heavy equipment salesman. You talked about like being able to be kind of good at a lot of different things. What are maybe some of those specific kind of areas that you became proficient and good at that you think helped contribute to your success in sales?
Yeah, so I think, before I came into sales, right, like my last stint was for 8 years, I worked at a fund called Invention Development Fund, where we were investing in very early stage technologies. And the premise really was that people who come up with technology ideas, right, like think of somebody tinkering around in their garage, they are not really people who know or are interested in how to take them to market, right? Like how to make money of those things, how to make those things at scale, how to kind of do all of the other business parts of it. And that's kind of where I realized the stark contrast that existed. And what I realized that a lot of times these people were not doing it because they didn't like the money that it could make them if it was successful, but they were not doing it because they had decided in their minds that it wasn't something that they were going to be good at, and they didn't want to kind of put themselves at risk in a new area, right, where they already knew what their comfort zone was, what they were good at. And I realized that so many people are held back because they don't want to put themselves out there, right? And like, if you have a certain level of comfort with sales and with putting yourself out there, you could do considerably better. And not just because I feel that they would be able to make money and sell things, but I think also because they would actually make something better, because they would get the skills of going out, talking to the right type of people, talking to their potential customers, so to speak, and then listening to that feedback, iterating on it, and making something better. And like, very often people miss that whole part of the cycle. They feel that, I'm really smart, I can make whatever the hell I want, and then somebody will want it if it's good. So to me, I felt that like, what sales forces you to do is listen to the people who really matter to that process, right? Whatever that process is, right? Like, whether that is you trying to sell a product, whether it is you trying to find the right market for something, whether it is you trying to develop a new product, all of that feedback loop in some sense and problem solving is part of the sales cycle.
Right. It is, right? Problem solving is such a big part of the sales cycle, but how did it feel like, being a woman in sales? What's your journey been like?
So I think it's strange and it's funny, and sometimes it's frustrating. So I think I didn't start out right in sales, and I didn't start out my career thinking of myself as a woman in anything, right? So I think both of those slowly came in as realizations, right? So maybe first instance of it was when I was in an investment bank, and I realized that there were hardly any women, right? And there was exactly one woman above the VP level in, like, I think all of APAC for Morgan Stanley at that point. And so that was kind of like, is it something that's not possible? Why is it so hard? Like, I don't see how I'm worse than my male peers at any of the stuff that we need to get done. Right. So that was one part of it. And I think what I realized was that, being a woman in sales, or being a woman in, like investment banking, to me, to a large extent, is also sales, is, a few things, right? One is finding the right kind of work-life balance, because otherwise you get eliminated through that journey. And secondly, finding the comfort in, being comfortable in who you are and owning that up. Like, the one woman who was successful was, really out there in terms of, not having the same set of interests that everybody else in the organization had. She didn't have to play golf to win those deals, right? So that was one part of it. But then as I started getting closer to that cycle for myself, and after I had spent like a bunch of time in the industry, it became clear that, definitely work-life balance was one part of why so many people weren't kind of moving up the ladder. For me personally, what I realized when I went into sales was that maybe to some extent, and I don't know whether this was a gender bias or a personal one, like I said, I don't look at, like, when I started my career, I didn't look at myself as a woman trying to do something. I just looked at myself as a person trying to do something. And I think that maybe there was some kind of gender differences in the comfort of putting yourself out there, in terms of saying that, I'm ready for being rejected, like things like that. And I think maybe to some extent, that is the variation that maybe holds some women back. And that definitely held me back early on. And then I had my moments of frustration. I had my moments of people telling me that, you should kind of adopt a different virtual persona. all sorts of stuff. And then I was like, making sales my own.
I love that. Carving out your own space. And that's amazing that you've been able to battle through some of those, whether it's gender pay gaps or the preconceived kind of thoughts or stereotypes of women, and then more specifically women from India that Americans get a lot of robocalls and so forth from those regions. So I'm sure you've encountered probably racism and so forth, depending on who you're trying to sell into in sales. So it is a challenge, but I love your courage and kind of you taking the lesson of being vulnerable to, like you said, kind of carve out your own space and not be afraid. What do you think's kind of been the biggest kind of support from allies and I guess specifically like male allies? What do you think they can do to be better allies to show that support that anybody can be successful in whichever industry as long as they kind of have a moral compass and do the right behaviors to have success?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of share a small example, right? Like I was at a sales event in the US. This was like 2019, something around Dreamforce, right? And I was just having a conversation with somebody I had just met at the event, and then somehow that conversation tended to have a lot of language that was making me feel uncomfortable, right? So I just kind of excused myself, went away, and then when I came back, to the room, somebody else had observed the conversation, just maybe standing a little bit far away. And that person came up to me and immediately said, "I'm so sorry for that experience, that wasn't kind of called for." And I think that's kind of one definition of an ally, right? Like I don't need somebody to come up and like create a ruckus or like go and slap somebody else, right? Like I think it's just about letting the other person know that if you're having a bad experience, you're not alone. You have other people who could support you. I think similarly also recognizing, for example, the fact that you have work-life balance as a big issue, why women are often held back, and therefore creating opportunities which are not like late night networking events, but creating opportunities that might be more just comfortable, right? Both from a timing perspective, but also from a situational perspective. Like, you're less likely to have like an absurd conversation if you're not that drunk, like what happened to me, right? So I think people can kind of think more systemically, or they can think, how they react to certain small events. Both, I think, are equally valuable if you're thinking of yourself as an ally. And I think it's the small things that really matter, because you don't know how a small experience might change somebody else's, whole experience of an industry or of their thought process around a career. So, if you see a wrong which is small or big, like go ahead, call it out, intervene. Don't like stand there, laugh at a joke that you don't think is funny.
Yeah, have some backbone, stick to your moral compass. I mean, if you witness that type of stuff, you don't have to make a ruckus, like you said, but you can surely make it known that what they did was uncomfortable, it wasn't acceptable, and frankly, that behavior won't and shouldn't be tolerated. And people need to stop trying to make things like cancel culture type stuff. I get like if somebody makes a mistake with work, I guess, as far as like sales or something goes, that's one thing. But some of the stories I hear, the things that come out of people's mouths or the expectations that they have at sales conferences is quite frankly like pathetic and sick. So getting those types of mindsets and those types of people with those that's their moral compass. They have the audacity to do that type of stuff on company dollar. I don't think of it as a cancellation. I think of it as the industry's holding itself accountable, and you're not the type of person that's cut out for this type of role. Just like there's some people that aren't cut out to be police officers, or there's people that aren't cut out to be doctors. That's just the reality, and some people need to face the music around that.
Yeah, though I think everybody, in a society needs to be cut out to be a decent human being to others. So
it's a great, you would think if it would just be the norm, but I guess it's a great place to start.
Yeah, start with the basics.
Yeah. So let's go back to work-life balance, right, Shruti? We have, especially for women, right? We keep hearing like, how will you be able to manage work life and personal life? That's a common question in interviews. I'm like, I don't care why, because no man gets asked that question. Men are parents too. Men have families too. Men have a life outside work as well. But it's women who are predominantly asked that question. Like 9 out of 10 times, it's a woman on the other side. And that is one of the questions we have to face, even in interviews, wherever we go. Like, my question is, why have we made it so that women have to be asked that question? Like, why does everyone has a life outside work? So, what should the sales community be doing to be taking that extra step to be inclusive? So the question of work-life balance doesn't come at all for specifically women. If it's something, it's neutral.
Yeah, so I think there are many angles to that, right? Like, and I'm sure, Sue, as a woman, you probably recognize many of those as well, right? One part of it is just the expectation in terms of, the duties around like running a family, right? And I think what we've done as a society overall, and this applies both, I think, to the US and to India, is that we've had a differential policy on how much time off a man gets versus a woman gets, when a child is born. And what that implies is that, you're implicitly saying that I think a woman's role is bigger. And yes, some parts of it, the woman does play a bigger role, but do you want to say that for the rest of the child's life, the woman's role is going to be bigger, right? You kind of start off on the wrong foot. And I think that maybe is not just about the sales profession, right? That's probably a bigger problem. But I think specific to sales, and I've heard this from so many people, right? Like, I was just in Boston a couple of weeks back for a launch of a book about women in sales. And it was like, I think 20 plus of us staying in one hotel, spending like a couple of days together. And, we were talking about everybody's experience in sales. And one thing that came up was that you have this period of a sales cycle, right? And then how do you actually support somebody who goes on a maternity break and comes back with the disruption that will cause to the sales cycle? So what typically happens is, like, before you start going on a maternity leave, people will stop giving you good accounts, right? So you probably miss your quota for a few months before you go on maternity leave. When you come back from maternity leave, people are not going to give you cooked accounts, right? They are going to expect you to, like, if you have a 3 to 6 month sales cycle, you kind of start from scratch. And then for the next 3 to 6 months, you're building your book of accounts. So literally you might take a few months off, but you actually sacrifice like 9 to 12 months in terms of commissions, in terms of your progression in the career. Now, people don't like to talk about that, right? Because they feel that they are not obligated to care and support women through that journey. But that's an example of where you could be an ally, and you could say, yes, you keep your accounts when you go on maternity leave, and we'll have somebody shadow you, and when you come back, you start shadowing them on their accounts, and you get back so that you can ramp up faster. But how many organizations actually think of it that way?
That's a great point. You would think too, you could like get creative with commission so that, like, hey, if you have hot accounts, instead of just letting it go dormant or risking like a sloppy handoff, like work with another salesperson, and maybe you guys work out a formula depending on how far along it is into the sales cycle, that like, hey, I'm going to get 80, but you're going to get 20 to just get it over the finish line type type deal. Like, companies can come, create some sort of HR appropriate gentleman's agreement, like they call it in the old time, but human agreement that would make somebody, both parties, I guess, motivated to do the right thing. And, if the people don't want to do the right thing, are they really the right person for the role? Again, it kind of comes back to a lot of that. What are like some of the biggest takeaways you think like that you've had from sales, and that I guess like helps you push into the next like level of success that maybe you've explicitly learned as a woman, but that you think kind of applies to the sales profession as a whole?
So I think one strong that I feel that maybe women are better at, and or maybe not, right? Like, but I think that's probably something that I've learned and begun to appreciate about myself, is just the ability to really listen, because I realize that a lot of times people feel their own self-confidence and worth with respect to how confidently they can speak or how much they can speak, right? But if you are really willing to listen, you'll actually find out so many more things that are going to be helpful, in problem solving, right? And that's a large part of what we try and do as sales. So yeah, I would say that, and the great thing is that everybody comes born with that quality. You just have to dig a little bit deeper, get a little bit quieter with yourself, and allow yourself the time and space to develop it. I would say that that's probably one thing that can be a real differentiator.
Yeah, that active listening, not being so quick to just get whatever's on your mind out, but making words matter. I always tell my SDRs that any cold call that you do, you should think that you have like a little piggy bank, and each word you're saying has value. So you want to maximize the value of the words you say in a short amount of time. If you're only going to, you got 15 to 20 seconds to catch somebody's attention. And I think once they kind of like shifted their perspective to look at things like that, they do listen more to what the person on the other side of the phone's saying, because they really have to make like, I'm not saying it's like mission critical decisions, a bomb's going to go off, but, they have to make quick, urgent decisions on a cold call to kind of like get them either interested or kind of quickly deciding that, there's no interest here and could end up being a waste of time. And I feel like it's really tough for women because unfortunately, sometimes on the other end of the phone, that person's not the most high integrity human being. And they'll like just flat out flirt with a cold call from a woman on the other end. And it's like, wow, like, I don't know. I guess even from like a male perspective, it's like, do we not value our own sanctity, at least a little bit, a little decency to like understand the difference between somebody that's calling for like a business call and how inappropriate and indecent it is to flirt back or cat call or something over the phone? Like, it's just crazy. I hope neither of you have had any experience like that, but it's just frustrating.
We all do at some point of time.
Yeah,
it's the perks of being a woman.
A perk, right?
Shruti, I'm curious to know. I've worked in the US for like US market for about 10 years now. I'm sure you've done longer. How's it being a brown person from India working for the US market? What's been the preconceived notions people have had about you? Tell us the good and the bad. Like, don't hide the bad. We want to know what's the good and the bad both.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is like, it takes some time to literally get comfortable in your own skin, right? because there have been so many sales events where I literally know that I am probably, or like, I am the only like brown skinned woman in the room, right? And recently I was at an event where somebody came and said, "Oh yeah, I've met you before." And like, she said, "We met in Dublin." And I'm like, "I've never been to Dublin in my life." But that's literally how, basically she must have met some other brown woman and she's like, "Oh yeah, this must be the same person," right?
Yeah, we all look the same, right?
We all look the same. And she refused to believe me that I hadn't been to Dublin. So anyways, I mean, I think, so there are some like, yeah, once you get comfortable, you can say, yeah, if you're trying to look for me, you can crack a joke about yourself. You won't have to search too hard. I'm the only brown person in the room. Like, and you can crack the joke because you're the brown person cracking the joke. But I think the other part of it is like, I've had experiences where, of course, so, I'm the founder of Wingman, which is a software in sales technology, and it's basically for analyzing sales conversations. So it's a SaaS product, but of course, I carry a lot of baggage of, one, being an Indian person and of being a woman, and of being from a country where lots of software services companies existed and where a lot of call centers exist, right? So I have all of that baggage when I walk into a room, and so people are going to judge me for, oh, I've had one bad experience with like some software agency in India, and so I'm sure your software is shitty, right? Or somebody is going to have the experience of saying, "Oh yeah, I've gotten like calls from call centers in India, and so I'm sure you guys don't know how to sell," right? And so you're coming with all of this great advantage. The good thing is that it can only go up. It can only get better from here, because everybody already has such a low opinion. I've had experiences of people telling me that if you actually want to succeed, maybe you should change your name and pretend to be of a different skin color. Because this is not really going to go down well for you when you try to do like cold outreaches to people. And, it wasn't like the person wasn't trying to give me bad advice or, be rude or anything, right? Like, he was genuinely trying to help me in his perspective. So I think, it can be hard at times, but once you begin to realize that this is probably the rock bottom, it feels a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Changing the name is a big one. Like, I remember in 2004, that's when I started my career. I started from a BPO, right? Although in a sales division, it was a BPO. So we had this rule that we have to change our name. You like it or you don't like it, you have to. It's to make, I was working for a UK market. So it was to make the white person feel comfortable in calling my name, I have to change my name because they don't feel the unease of my name. That is the truth of, every Indian or brown person selling to the US market. We have to think of the convenience of the white person being the brown person in the room.
Yeah. And, you can't turn off and on the color of your skin. You can't really hide any of that, especially now there's Zoom videos. So I love that both of you just lean into who you are. And it's like, you know what? If somebody's not going to do business with me, that's their fault. They're missing out. And I'm going to continue doing what I do and do it well. And they're either going to figure out or they're going to see me as a competitor, a co-founder of my own company. So that is awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Sue, any other questions you have that are top of mind? Or
how did the book happen, Shruti?
Oh.
How did the book happen? Very much by chance. So Heidi was compiling a book, and her idea really was that she wanted to get a variety of stories of women who had been in sales and who had perhaps done different things within the sales role and had maybe come to sales from many different paths. And I think through her research somewhere, she found me. We had a few common connects on LinkedIn. And so she reached out and she said, would I be willing to kind of put my own story out? And that was kind of the start of it. And the idea with the book is really cool because what it is trying to do is, in the process, showing everyone that there is probably somebody who you relate to as a role model. And I think that the value of role models, we often underestimate, right? Like, I realize now, looking back almost like, I think 15 years since I started my career, at that one woman in that investment bank and how much hope she gave me, right? Like, knowing that at least one person could get there. And I think that not everybody has role models in their own lives. And so if you can create role models for people, and to some extent, people have to be able to relate to the role model for them to feel that it's possible for them.
Yeah. I mean, there's no point having a role model that you can never relate to, because you'll never get there. If there is someone, and that's one thing that made me so happy, because I was like, finally there's a woman from India who, people know and we can relate to, and, you have examples to look up to, right? If someone can do it, you can do it as well. Right. And you don't have to sell yourself every time. At least, when there are other people like you who are, being showcased, it adds to the whole community being able to be more receptive to the thought of, someone from a different community being a part of, the top elite, so to say.
Yeah. And I think you get the courage that somebody else has managed to problem solve through some of the challenges you'll face. And, it's possible.
Yeah, a longer journey, but it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say sometimes, nothing can prepare you for some of the things that come out of people's mouths. So you kind of just have to try and prepare yourself on how you handle things. And one thing that you said was that I have practiced and I think is profound, is to kind of stop and listen and try to better understand what brought that person to that conclusion versus just the man that was telling you, he thought he was giving you great advice on how to not get, how to avoid racism or so forth in the sales community versus it's almost like, oh, let me get you a chaperone versus let's change the behavior here instead. And I think, people of color, women, so forth, we're tired of being told we need essentially a white shepherd to guide us through this, this sales community. It's no, we're going to change the community for the better, and people are going to be, they're going to have to deal with differences. The world has all, regions all across the world where people are different, but they share a common good for humanity and wanting to be good people and not put out filth. So they can either get with it or get out, as far as we're concerned.
And I think one thing that I learned from that instance was that you don't have to be able to change everybody's mind. You just have to find the people whose minds you want to change and whose minds you can change. And so, when you're making a sale, you're as much in charge of making that choice. And you can choose to engage on your own terms, right? Of course, getting to that leverage takes some time. It's easy for me to sit today and say that. And of course, I was even in that position when I was having that conversation, the founder of my own company. And so, I had a bunch of leverage. But I think it applies to everyone to recognize that, it's perfectly okay if there are people you come across whose behaviors you don't want to engage with, whether that is, if you're an SDR trying to do a cold call and somebody tries to flirt with you, or, in whatever other situation you find yourself. And I think today organizations are also, much more open to calling out those kinds of behaviors or saying that, I'm perfectly okay if you lose that deal. because somebody misbehaved with you on that deal. And I think that's the kind of support we need to make sure that we also give to the people, right? That's probably another example of how you could be an ally.
For sure, for sure. You shared that one of your biggest influencers was actually I'm a big fan of Kevin Dorsey. So what of KD specifically are you a huge fan of, or how'd you get introduced to KD Kevin Dorsey?
Yeah, so I've been, like I've had a few conversations with him over the last 3-4 years, and I think one thing that I really like about him, and he really cares about coaching and improving the people that he works with, and I find that like a lot of people just do lip service to it, and I think that's something that I really admire, and I think the advice that he gives is always think that that he's tried and tested, and not just stuff that he's making along the way. And he really tries to make an effort to get people to become better, right? So that's kind of why he's on that list.
That's awesome. How has there been a time where like a coach in your sales career or somebody is kind of like giving you that extra, I guess, attention to sales detail, or helped you just kind of like see sales in a different light?
Unfortunately not, because most of my career I didn't spend in sales, right? I was on the finance and investing side, and so yeah, sales is relatively new to me, but I came at it from a very different journey, which meant that I did not start at the bottom of the sales ladder, right? So I didn't have in some sense the privilege of having direct close role models in that journey, or mentors in that journey. But in the last 3 years, I've learned a lot by, being out there with folks on LinkedIn, doing, interviews with them, co-creating some content with them. And I think through that journey, I've gotten to learn a lot more. But yeah, it's been a different type of mentoring experience.
That's awesome. At least, there's some good parts to the sales journey. It's not all toxic jerks being silly. There's some reward in this. So, and I think that's what we all aim to like protect, is kind of the space, and having that ability to learn and kind of figure out who you are and how you want to present yourself. I mean, it's a little more than just like selling a product nowadays. You can build your like personal brand on LinkedIn. You can the speak of like one to many versus one to one in sales. You can transition into marketing with all like the technology. If you're, interested in that side of things, there's kind of a lot of different avenues, like you said, that you can kind of put maybe a couple feathers in different caps to improve, but also like transition into a different, role if that's your desire, I guess, with sales. And those sales skills continue to follow you, like those lessons you learned in communication styles and strategies. So I just think you've got my mind, like the creative mind of me going. So I apologize, I'm kind of rambling. I'll let Sue, if you have anything else, or do we want to roll into the lightning round?
Appreciate.
Cool. Oh my God, there's a lightning round.
The lightning round, it goes quick. So, just some questions we ask. We'll kind of trade back and forth, and we're excited to see how you answer them. So I'll just kick it off. What's your morning routine?
So I would say that I like to follow this thing called SAVERS, which stands for silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, read, and scribe. But I think most mornings it ends up being my son like prodding me to come out and play with him. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pick one person who has had a significant impact in your career.
My father.
That's awesome. Any Any particular reason or anything you want to expand on, or just?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The background really is that I grew up in northern part of India. Was born in a relatively small town. Most people there wouldn't really do higher education, but I think my father was so particular that we got educated, and we were, three girls. He actually moved cities so that he could make sure that we got really good education. And I think, you can't have a bigger influence in what you do in life than the early education.
That's awesome, man. Shout out to him. What a great thing he did. And look what it brought us, which is awesome. What's your pump up song?
What's my pump up song? So the Bell Bottoms song from Baby Driver.
I don't know that one, but I'm going to have to add it to my playlist now.
What's the one thing you'd wished you'd learned earlier?
Don't be afraid of a no.
That's a good one. What book has had the biggest impact on your sales career?
I don't think there's a specific book.
Tell me it's the one you've written.
Which, plug it. Go ahead and plug it. Where can all the listeners and viewers find your book?
Yeah, so it's called Heels to Deals, right? It's about women dominating in the world of sales and business. And yeah, you can find it on any of your favorite bookstores or Kindle. So it's on Amazon, Walmart, whatever else.
Nice. Heels to Deals.
What's one way someone would have been a better ally to you?
Yeah, I wish, in more situations where somebody was, maybe putting me down directly or indirectly, I wish somebody was also there whispering and telling me that you could make the choice and ignore whatever you were hearing.
What's one way you're working to be a better ally for others?
So today, one small thing that I try to do is whenever there's an opportunity to put myself across where I feel somebody might benefit from seeing me as a possible role model and maybe as a possible mentor, being open to having more of those opportunities and conversations.
Love that.
What's your guilty pleasure after a long day?
Dark chocolate and kombucha.
Not bad, not bad. So that is the end of the lightning round. You made it to the end. See, it wasn't that bad.
Awesome.
And so everybody, you can find, we'll have all the social links, but where can people find you online, Shruti?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can search for Shruti Kapoor and Wingman, and I think I'll be the one who shows up. Awesome. And guys, as always, you'll find The Other Side of Sales on LinkedIn at The Other Side of Sales, Instagram, OS_prod, I think, pod, and on Twitter at The Other Side of Sales. So I'm Ryan Woodard. Again, thank you guys.
I'm Sue Singh, and thank you so much, guys.
And Shruti, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Fun talking to both of you. Awesome. We'll see you guys. Thank you.